Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Kerr. I'm the current president of the Pagan Federation. I took up the president's seat the year before the 50th celebrations began and have had the pleasure over the last year and a half of getting to know our history quite well. Today it's my honour to share that with you. The seeds were planted for the Pagan Federation we all know today back in 1968 when a small newsletter called The Wiccan began. It all started by our founder, John Score, in order to keep a small group of Gardnerians in touch. It quickly grew as it became clear there were more people in need of this kind of publication, and they weren't just Gardnerians. It opened with the words, "The editor believes that the old religion should become, once more, effective in public life to the latter's considerable betterment by application of those concepts which originally guided our peoples of the Western world." At the time of the Wiccans' establishment, other pagan organisations had begun to emerge across the world. One such organisation, called the Pagan Movement, was about to be set up in the UK by a United States Air Force warrant officer called Sergeant Joe Wilson. This caused John particular concern at the time, and undoubtedly caused him to act to set up the PF when he did. Joe Wilson was known to be a spy, and John was concerned that if the US Intelligence Service, or what, have you had secured a list of practicing pagans in the UK, the British Home Office would have been very slow not to have received a copy. Thankfully, Joe Wilson was posted out of the UK. The pagan movement came under the leadership of Tony Kelly instead, and flourished as a respectable organisation until the 1980s. Of course, the PF would probably have been founded eventually with or without the pagan movement, because sooner or later there had to be a UK organisation to match the international organisations that had already been established. The anti-defamation work of the PF started before its official ratification in 1971 with opposing the Anti-Witchcraft Bill, which had been introduced to the Commons by the MP Gwilym Roberts. Doreen Valiente went to Westminster to take tea with Mr. Roberts and successfully managed to persuade him that witches weren't the offensive beings that he thought they were. The formation of the Pagan Front, the name that the PF began with, was announced in the Wiccan at the end of 1970 and given the Ankh cross as its symbol, a threefold creed and a mission statement. Its ratification came at Beltane of 1971 and the PF began its official existence. Of course, back in 1971 the world was a much smaller place, and as far as the founders were concerned, Wiccan witches were the only surviving priesthood of the old religion. So the creed became the pagan ethic, do what you will so long as it harm no one. Reincarnation, with its implications of survival of bodily death and karma or personal fate, which we make ourselves, and love and kinship for nature. These eventually became love for and kinship with nature, reverence for the life force and its ever-renewing cycles of life and death, a positive morality in which the individual is responsible for the discovery and development of their true nature in harmony with the outer world and community. This is often expressed as do what you will, as long as it harms none. And recognition of the divine, which transcends gender, acknowledging both the female and male aspect of the deity. Of course, as we have learned of the extensive diversity of the beliefs and traditions within the pagan community over the last 50 years, we do better and no longer ask our members to subscribe to these if it isn't part of their beliefs or lifestyle, though it does remain in our constitution in honour of our founders. The inaugural meeting took place on the 1st of May, somewhere in Chiswick. Proceedings were opened with a circle dance and a recital of Doreen's poem, The Sleeper. Friends that in the circle stand, heart to heart and hand to hand, bringing Beltane to the land, let the sleeper wake. Let the flames of Beltane burn, may the old ones now return, may we of their magic learn, let the sleeper wake. Let the streams and fields be pure, earth and sky be clean once more, love and laughter long endure, let the sleeper wake. Forests spreading, peace returning, where the pagan fires are burning, now the inner light discerning, let the sleeper wake. May the lady's touch again rest upon the barren plain, with the sunshine and the rain, let the sleeper wake. Beltane magic, here we sing, chant the rune and dance the ring, joy and blessing shall it bring, let the sleeper wake. Blessed be. Doreen addressed the meeting with the following words. Friends, first of all may I welcome you here to this first meeting of the Pagan Front. I am not going to talk at any great length, because the main purpose of this meeting is not for you to listen to us, but for us to hear your ideas and feelings about paganisms today, what it means and what it ought to mean. However, if I may, I would like to say a few words of my own. As you have probably gathered, the Pagan Front and our contemporary, the Pagan movement, have in the past been somewhat at cross purposes. I am now optimistic that people on both sides will mutually recognise that this is both unwise and unnecessary, because both organisations are ultimately striving for the same things, and we should therefore work together in a spirit of brotherhood. Unity is strength, and I welcome the fraternal unity of all sincere people of goodwill who follow the pagan path. We may not always agree with each other, but we must support each other in our struggle for our right to follow the religion and the lifestyle of our choice in the modern world. We rejoice in being heretics, because heretic means one who chooses. That is, we choose our own way to live, to think and to worship, not only because it pleases us, but because we believe that human society needs the old pagan wisdom to restore it to health and sanity in what people are increasingly recognizing as a very sick world. Today, as you know, is the morrow of the old Sabbath of Beltane, sometimes called Walpurgis Night. Beltane means bright fire, the fire which welcomes the coming of summer, and Walpurgis Night is named after Walburga, an old name for the goddess of nature. At this time of year, people have something real to rejoice about. In spite of all man's follies and the ugliness of his world, nature's world is forever renewed in beauty. This is what we rejoice in today, and to complete the magical triad, we have two other things to rejoice in. One is the ideal and the hope of collaboration between the different pagan groups in this country, between witch-covens of different traditions, indeed between all pagan people who are sincere and of good intent, with the mutual recognition that with our different functions as groups, we can be complementary to each other, like the different forces in nature. In 1973, the outline was laid for the structure of the PF that still exists today. John saw the need for a national structure with areas that had their own teams which supported and connected pagans in their areas. This is still the basis of how we work today, with 9 districts covering England and Wales, and a 10th to provide for members of the armed forces and their families. His reasoning for this furthering of PF reach was that divisions must cease between different pagan groups if we were to successfully challenge rising hostility towards pagans, whether from the press, other faith groups, or the government of the day. Personally, I believe this still to be true, and I hold with the idea that we are stronger together than we are divided. Despite these ideas, I'm unsure as to whether John understood that the PF would reach global levels, and now we are proud to be affiliated with 4 sister organisations: PF Scotland, PF Ireland, PF Deutschland, and PF International, who all continue the anti-defamation work he began a little over 50 years ago, but across the globe. John passed away in November 1979, and the helm of the PF was taken up by Prudence Jones, who by 1981 had changed the name to the Pagan Federation so as to disassociate it from the National Front, which had grown in numbers during the 1970s. In 1985, English Heritage banned all visitors to Stonehenge during the summer solstice, including the Druid Order, which had celebrated there openly since at least 1902. At the time, the PF had not moved past its largely Wiccan base, and so the Pagan Anti-Defamation League was born. Fronted by Nigel Pennick and Prudence Jones, Paddle wrote letters, made TV appearances, went to English heritage meetings, mediated with Druids, and generally stood up for the religious traditions which went unrecognised by many. Their campaign unfortunately had little effect, and was wound up, but it gave the PF a public face, and so the work of Paddle was integrated. This enabled the PF to be reformulated and to embrace a new way of working that went far beyond Wicca. In 1988, a fundamentalist Christian disinformation campaign led to the satanic ritual abuse myth. This made life dangerous for witches and everyone else on a non-establishment spiritual path. Conservative MP Geoffrey Dickens, briefed by the fundamentalist Reach Out Trust, proposed reintroducing the Witchcraft Act on the grounds that witches abuse children. This led to the formation of the PF Committee, who, alongside other pagan and occult organisations, spent much of their time over the next 3 years working to aid the people whose lives were affected and thrown into disarray by unwarranted attention from the police and social services. Finally, in 1991, the PF assisted some falsely accused parents on Orkney with evidence that scares such as this are a recurrent happening during human history. They in turn found sociologists and forensic experts to assist with their case. They won, and this led to a gradual change in public opinion. Prudence stepped down as president in 1991 and handed over the chair to Ellen Williams, who was ably assisted by Vivian and Chris Crowley as secretary and treasurer, later joined by Lulu Taylor and Tony Meadows. The PF Council was set up to ensure that experienced PF officers were brought into circulation for decision making, and the structure of the PF we all know today was almost complete. There have been many achievements over our 50 years. Here's what some of that work has included. From 1971 to the present day, we have provided ongoing advocacy and support to pagans who face discrimination of many kinds. From 1971 to the present day, and into the future, we have provided ongoing responses to the media when pagans and paganism have appeared in the news. From 1971 to the present day, and onwards, we will engage in dialogue and collaboration with official bodies to ensure that pagans receive equal consideration to those of other faiths, and that those bodies are better informed about pagans. In 1986, we successfully campaigned alongside the British Naturist Association against the anti-nudity provisions of the Public Order Act which would have made nakedness illegal anywhere a passerby might have seen it, no matter how likely that might have been. In 1988, we successfully secured religious exemption from the anti-knife legislation brought in that year, and since then pagans have had the right to carry knives securely to and from rituals. 1990 saw us asked by the Home Office to select pagan prison ministers, which we have done ever since. In 2004, the Scottish PF gained the right to conduct legally binding weddings under Scottish law. In 2006, courts in England and Wales accepted the use of the pagan oath when giving evidence in court. In 2008, the PF, representing pagans, accepted the offer of membership of the National Council for Faiths and Beliefs in Further Education. In 2011, we gained representation on the Religious Education Council of England and Wales, and we continue to work for consideration of the inclusion of paganism within educational settings. In 2013, Scottish PF gained membership of Interfaith Scotland. And in 2014, we aim to deepen relationships with other pagan organisations through the Pagan and Heathen Symposium. In 2014, we became members of the Interfaith UK to engage in communication and connection with other faith communities. In 2015, we began consulting with the Law Commission when they reviewed the provision for weddings in England and Wales. That work is still ongoing. In recent years, we have taken part in the independent inquiry for child abuse in religious settings. Our advocacy officer has recently had discussions with CAFCAS, the Children's Court Service, and ensured that they are trained in pagan beliefs. We've begun to build links to pagans within the defence community. Scottish PF launched their discrimination survey and shocked us all with the results of the level of discrimination that pagans still receive today. We supported the efforts of the Witchcraft and Human Rights Information Network in their successful attempt to get the UN to pass a resolution on harmful practices, accusations of witchcraft and ritual attacks, effectively seeing the end of witch hunts. We have supported our community through the pandemic with online content. We recently joined the Network for Pastoral, Spiritual and Religious Care and Health for Healthcare Chaplaincy, setting our endorsement standards for hospital visitors and chaplains who are visiting pagans in healthcare settings. In 2016, our disabilities team established online festivals, and we're still going strong with those. Our community support teams have grown. We now include not only hospital ministry, interfaith and youth and education, we also have support for those in our community who are disabled or are LGBTQIA+, and our children and families team has begun providing not only support but resources for young pagan families. And we have also recently established our new cultural cohesion team. Our aims remain the same as they have been for many years. We will always seek to support all pagans in their personal and public life, to help ensure that they have the same rights as the followers of other beliefs and members of other religions. We will continue to promote a positive profile for pagans and paganism, and to provide information on pagan paths and beliefs to the media, official bodies, and to benefit the greater community in improving their understanding of paganism and pagans as a growing spiritual community. We will also continue to facilitate effective communication, education and dialogue within and between pagan communities and with non-pagans through our publications and events. As we stand at the door of the next 50 years, where are we at now? Well, we're ready for another evolution. The changes we're making now ensure that we're up to the standard of being an actual charity and that we're sustainable for the next 50 years. These include major changes in how we support our volunteers. We are currently undertaking a review of all our policies and procedures to bring them in line with charity best practice. We have produced an induction pack for new volunteers. We are reviewing and updating all our websites. We're also reviewing all our role descriptions and volunteer paperwork, as well as our recruitment processes. We are working on a definitive brand, and to start that work have completed trademarking on the PF logo. We are finalising work that was recommended after results of the work of an internal communications subcommittee, which finished the year before last. We are also working on our external communications with our members, the general public, pagan and non-pagan organisations, and the press and media through our external communications subcommittee. We have recently launched our Legacy project, a standalone project that is, although PF launched, is a community gift in order to store the stories of our history. We are building relationships with other pagan organisations and especially seeking to heal those that are in need of it. We are also investigating the possibility of extending our chaplaincy teams to include community and university teams. The future, it really is bright. In the last 50 years, we have seen some incredible accomplishments, all started by one man in the beginning, but along the way, there have been many great and amazing people furthering the work of the PF, whom I would like to mention and offer my own personal gratitude to here. Some are well known in the pagan world, and some are less known, but their contributions have most definitely not been any the less for that, and each and every one of us owes each of them a debt of gratitude for the energy they dedicated to furthering our cause. Some are sadly no longer with us, and some we are privileged to be able to still work alongside today. This list is not by any means definitive, and is in no particular order either, though I think if I had tried to list every person who is deserving of merit, we'd be here a very long time. I would specifically like to mention John Score, Prudence James, Jean Williams, Zach Cox, John and Kitty McIntyre, Chris and Vivian Crowley, Pete Jennings, Belinda Winder, Michelle Edwards, Pam Gardner, Pat Pitts, Steve Ludford, Dave Bracey, Barry Bartholomew, Morgana Sidove, Stephen Haggerty, Ray Sweeney, Adrian and Anne Bryn Evans, Cassandra Latham, Lindsay Long, Mike Steigall, and Robin Taylor. I couldn't go without also mentioning the current PF committee. My Vice Presidents Emma Hall and Chris Holmes, General Secretary Keith Tovey, Communications Officer Rich Blackett, Community Support Officer Dan Coltas, Treasurer Andrew Trotok, Prisons Minister Officer Helen Mobius, District Liaison Officer Melissa Wheeler, Environmental Officer Anne Edwards, and our Council Rep to Committee, Lee Smith. My last thank you goes to everyone else who has either been a PF officer or a PF member over the 50 years of its existence. Without their time, energy and belief in what the PF does, none of this would have been possible. And as a pagan who can be open and free to be who she wants to be, it's an honour for me to be able to continue their work as we move forward into the next 50 years of the Pagan Federation. Thank you.